Everybody. Really appreciate everybody jumping on and joining us today. We are very, very happy to have Anthony Rodriguez just having an open Q&A. He's worked with us in training our dogs for a while, has done a fabulous job. Hey, Christine, I see a couple of people there. And so we're really excited to offer this and really, really appreciate you joining. So one of the things for those who are jumping on now, if you would like, it will help Anthony to kind of know, we invited both adopters and fosters and volunteers. So if you want to just throw out in chat, hey, I'm an adopter, I'm a foster, or whatever your role is, or all of the above. And then that'll kind of help him. But we really, really appreciate Anthony doing this. He's going, at the end, we're going to put up his website and his YouTube video link so that you'll have some resources that you can follow through. Beth is going to kind of go over the technical aspect of how to ask a question.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. So on the bottom of your screen, you should have a little toolbar, and one of those icons will say chat. And if you haven't already clicked on that, go ahead and click on that. It'll bring up a box, a panel on the right side where you can see the any chat questions. And if you'll just scroll down to the bottom, you should be able to just type your message there and hit the send button, and we'll answer your question that way. If you want to stop Anthony at some point and ask a question, on that same toolbar on the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little heart, and that's your reactions panel. If you click on that, you'll see some little emojis there, and there's a little raise hand emoji. So if you do that, if you want to stop and ask a question in the moment, you can use chat, you can raise your hand, and we'll come to that chat panel and make sure we get your question answered.
All right. So we'll go ahead and get this ball rolling. First off, thank you guys for coming out. This is something that, like Jennifer said, we hope to be able to offer to, as many people within the rescue community as possible. Another thing I want to thank you guys for is for participating in rescue. Fostering and adopting, it is not for everybody, but those folks who are willing to give it a shot, willing to be open to taking dogs into their home, that come from questionable backgrounds, it is truly admirable. So from me, from Beth and Jennifer, we all thank you guys for doing that, and we hope to be able to help you guys out with this process. I'll give you a little bit of backstory on me. I've been working with dogs professionally for about 8 years now. The way I started was I just took a class. I was just really curious as to learning how professionals taught dogs, and really from then on out, my life just kind of snowballed into what I call dog world. I worked a lot with local shelters, worked a lot with local rescues, and ended up getting certified through the Certification Council of Professional Dog Trainers. I have 2 certifications with that. One is more of a general knowledge and skills certification, and the other one is a behavior consulting certification. And when folks ask me, what do you do? Most people just assume I'm a dog trainer. And if I've learned anything over the past 8 years, it's teaching a dog to do a skill is not inherently challenging. Helping humans learn a specific dog in a specific environment, along with their specific character traits, that's the challenge. It's finding that middle ground. And as a foster, that is something that you guys experience regularly when it comes to taking in a dog from an unknown history into your home and lifestyle and routine. It can definitely be a challenge. And every situation is different. So that's why we wanted to kind of come up with this type of open forum setup to where if you have specific questions or a specific experience you want to reference, this is the place to do it because we got plenty of time. Normally we save questions for the end of a seminar and we are kind of crunched on time, but we wanted to be able to be as open and as in-depth and as tangent oriented as necessary. So again, thank you guys for doing this. I've also been fostering for a while too. So learning through the experiences of your past fosters is a big benefit for you, and if it's your first foster, being open about learning through that experience is really important too. No foster situation, no dog's going to be the same. Though, like I said, you will learn from previous experiences, but more times than not, you'll learn exponentially from the future ones too. So really being open and you guys are already this, but very empathetic to the dog's approach too. You know, a lot of dogs, whether they come from a shelter, whether they come from boarding at a vet or boarding at a kennel, or they were just found, you know, and they spend a couple days at the vet getting taken care of, and then now they're being introduced to the home for the first time. You know, all these situations will bring up unique challenges, but my hope is to be able to prepare you guys in a way that builds your confidence in knowing what you can take on, or knowing that someone else may be better suited to take on that case. You know, having this type of open dialogue, I think, is really gonna to hopefully enlighten everyone on how different each other's foster's experience can be. So like Beth was saying, if you got a question, you're welcome to go ahead and put it in the chat, or raise your hand. But while we're here, I guess I just want to start off with just the idea of the first couple days of a foster dog in your house. You know, like I said, these dogs come from all different backgrounds, but really recognizing how they may not have experienced a stable environment thus far in their life is something to really, I think, keep in mind. You know, when it comes to variables, there are many variables in our life that we may or may not recognize, but I'm sure our dogs do. You know, variables in our home could consist of other dogs, of course, or other animals, um, kids, you know, or even just young adults, other guests or family members coming over. All these things play into account as to how our dog may perceive the environment. You know, so if you're getting a foster dog within the first couple of days, even though you may have friends or family that are like, oh, I want to come meet your foster dog, I want to come play with it, or let's go for a walk, or let's take it to the store, I would say give it a few days just so you can understand this dog's true personality. You know, it takes a couple days of consistency before they realize, you know, okay, this environment is like this about the same time every day. She comes home, we eat, you know, all that they're learning extremely fast. And something that I harp on regularly with humans is that dogs are incredibly adaptable, right? But once the environment is stable and predictable, then they can kind of let their guard down a little bit and let that true personality shine. Um, so just be aware of that. I know it's always exciting to get a new dog in your household, but really giving it a chance to kind of adapt and adjust to your environment um, is very wise, I think, on the front end. And you may get a young dog that's just raring to go right off the bat. Even still, I would say try to create some sort of stable, predictable routine so that way, in the event of them getting too excited or just overstimulated, you have a plan of decompression. You know, and a lot of dogs, especially Goldens, you know, their brains are just, they're juicing, you know, they're ready to do things, right? And for a lot of them, it's hard for them to calm themselves down, you know, so sometimes you have to create a strategy that really conduces or supports decompression in a dog. And that can be challenging, of course, but that's something that I found is really important. You know, when I go into people's homes, whether it's multi dogs or one dog or a dog plus a bunch of kids, you know, my first goal is to say, all right, let's bring the energy down a little bit, just so you know the dog can, you know, relax or regulate themselves, and then we can keep talking, you know, and go deeper. Um, let's see. So we do have a question here from Amy. Thank you, Amy. She says, "Do you recommend exercise to help a dog be calm?" So great question. Um, Exercise to me is a small part of the bigger picture, which I consider enrichment as the big umbrella topic. You know, exercise is under there, mental stimulation's under there, independent enrichment is under there. So like it really is important to recognize what kind of dog are you looking at right now? You know, is this dog the moment, like let's say if fetch is your mode of exercise for a dog. A lot of Goldens love fetch. A lot of Goldens are obsessed with fetch too. So like if you bust out a tennis ball and you see your dog's eyes get like this, they're fully dilated and they are just bouncing off the walls, excuse me. Um, that may not be the best approach for that dog, right? You may look at some form of passive enrichment versus active enrichment. Active enrichment, walking, playing tug, playing chase, playing fetch, high energy games, right? These most, if we're talking Golden specifically, most Goldens are gonna resonate with that unless they have maybe some sensitivities or fear or anxiety. But but that may not be the best approach for those types of dogs, you know. So recognizing if your dogs get keyed up from something as simple as grabbing a tennis ball or getting picking up a leash, ask yourself, okay, what are some other activities we might could do that will accomplish enrichment but also decompression? And for me, this term I use very frequently, and I'll probably go back here a lot today, is busy work. You know, busy work is something I'm sure everyone's heard of Kongs, but busy work in my mind is independent enrichment where the dog can focus on a task for a prolonged period of time. If you have a dog that works a Kong to completion, I mean, that is a task that you can administer realistically at any point in time, but you can be strategic about when you might give them this. For example, if you have an adolescent dog or a dog that gets really keyed up around 6 or 7 or 8, or anytime you start to eat, the dog wants to play, perfect opportunity for busy work. And the fact that they can focus on anything for an extended period of time is inherently going to be decompressing for them because now they have something to focus on versus just, you know, head on a swivel. What's next? What's next? What's next? You can also take just how you feed your dog can be a decompressing and enriching activity that you might do a couple times a day. You know, in our culture, slow feeder bowls are starting to become more popular, which I really like. But also regular bowls are pretty standard for feeding. But with foster dogs, especially, I love the opportunity of taking advantage of the task of feeding potentially twice a day and turning that into an activity. Again, you have to recognize your dog to know which direction may be most appropriate. But I'll give you two examples. If you have a dog that does love balls or tennis balls or round like objects, you could experiment with a feeder ball. Feeder balls are just a hard plastic ball. It's just a shell that has a couple holes in it where you would put their food in, and then the dog can, you know, hopefully methodically start knocking the food out and then searching for the food. It could be done in a crate or out in the yard or in a contained space, but that task itself, it gives them something to focus on and it stimulates their sense of smell. So, in other words, while they're searching for the food in the grass, they're going to be breathing in and out the entire time. So, that is a great approach to feeding. So, I guess to kind of put a cap on that, the idea of taking advantage of normal tasks and converting them into decompression, I think is in everyone's best interest. But again, some dogs to decompress, they might need to be put in an environment where they can physically decompress, whether that be a guest room or a crate or a pen or just a separate environment where they can relax. Some tips for those spaces would be low lighting, um, some sound, whether it be a sound machine or a clock radio or a TV. Just create some atmosphere in that space so they're not just wanting to say, "I want to be where you guys are. I want to be where you guys are." Um, but those can be really challenging, the separation cases. But great question as far as exercise and enrichment goes. Um, let's see. Anyone else have any questions on that topic? And if I don't get any, we can shift gears again. So while we're waiting, let's see. So Lisa says, my dog is a golden chow, has zero interest in toys or balls of any kind. Beautiful. Her ideal day is an endless walk. She does like for me to chase her in the back of her, have no success. Okay, Lisa. Let's see. Beth, could we unmute Lisa real quick? Where is Lisa on my screen? Oh, there she is right there. Beautiful. Let's see. We're going to try to unmute you, Lisa. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. Okay. All right. So your golden chow. As far as the endless walk goes, what does she do on her walks? Is she smelling on walks? Is she?
Yes,
Yes.
she is, and I mean, she has to read the news, and apparently there is a lot of news on our walks. Every blade of grass, every leaf, every tree, post,
Beautiful.
But I mean, she lives. That is the very best part of her day is when I get the leash out. She is ready to go, but she will not. I can't. I have frozen stuff inside bones because she likes like beef bones that have been boiled. She loves to chew on those. No interest.
Okay.
Kongs, no interest. Throwing a ball to her or just getting her to interact with any kind of a toy at all, useless.
Okay.
I've never had a dog that didn't like some form of play.
Gotcha. Well, Chase is play, and I mean, well, sometimes, when it comes to toys, there is a strategy with how to make things more interesting. You're right on with trying to associate food or some sort of um novel stimulus to her with that. But again, if she doesn't like toys, if she doesn't like to chew things, I like the idea of exploring other options with her. Smell walks are amazing, you guys. And what I mean by smell walks are walks where we're not worried about covering ground. Again, exercise is a lot of times the focal point of a walk, but in reality, stimulation. They are seeing things, they are hearing things, they're smelling things. I mean, these are uh, experiences that they can't really have within your house. But for some folks, say if you have a reactive dog, it may not be as easy to accomplish in a neighborhood. But what I do for those folks is I try to recommend they go to church campuses during the week. You can get you a long line, just go explore. She can get all the news she wants, and or school campuses on the weekend are similarly as vacant, or hopefully.
Yeah, I
You
hadn't thought about that. So, and this is sort of off topic. She's reactive. Um, and she's not vicious or aggressive, but if someone tries to pet her, she will snap and bark. She doesn't hurt them, but she creates distance
Okay.
and she positions herself between me and them at all times. And so I work on film sets. That's my job. And the producer that I'm working with currently has seen her and wants to put her in this film that we're working on, which I think would be great. But I'm afraid of because her anxiety gets so high around and her anxious tendencies get high around people she doesn't know. And as long as petting her is her idea, then she's fine. But she does not like a lot of people coming up to her trying to pet her. And
Yeah.
I have anxiety. I don't know what to do. I haven't committed her to it, but I think it would be good for her,
Gotcha. Okay.
you know.
So, yeah. So, a lot to unpack here. Okay. So, well, let me ask you just one quick question, Lisa. Do you ever bring treats on a walk, or do you think your dog would eat food from you on a walk? Um,
Oh, we treats are how I keep her in heel
okay. Beautiful.
position.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Excellent. Okay, so
yeah,
you got a couple things happening. So one is when, folks approach you guys, you said she kind of gets in front of you and is kind of say indecisive on if she wants petting or not. Safe to
yeah.
say,
And
right?
she's guarding. She
Well,
guards
so
me.
that's what I was gonna point is that, it's a really common misconception to think that they're guarding us in that context, but in reality, she's getting as close to you as possible, but herself, her own emotions, that's at the forefront of her mind. There's a lot of situations, and it's no fault to think that on the front end, because that's a logical way to look at that
Mhm.
situation. But oftentimes, we interpret things in ways that make sense to us, but often it's easy, it's more simple than that. I mean, dog logic is not incredibly complex. Action leads to a result. If I like that result, I'll do it again. If I don't like it, might try something different. But in those situations, especially with novel people or people they don't know that are approaching, they're likely going to try to be as close to you as possible, if not retreat, or if not aggress forward to try to make space. Space is your best friend with a dog that's sensitive with new people, or anxious in the world type situations. But that doesn't mean you have to avoid these encounters entirely. In fact, what you have is, especially if you have understanding people you're talking to, you have opportunities to build your dog's confidence and build some trust with a new person and enhance everyone's experience. The great compromise for me is a tossed treat from a person. Tossed treat is the key word, and realistically, you have to get ahead of a lot of human, interactions because they're going to do things that make sense to them. In our culture, we encounter people who have lived with dogs their entire life, right? And they may have had made a lot of dog friends in their lifetime, right? And you may deal with some confidence, some false sense of confidence with people who haven't met your dog yet. These are who I call the magic people. The magic people think all dogs love them, but in reality, they
Yes.
haven't met all the dogs, and magic is an illusion. But the idea being, like I said, if you can get ahead of it, say someone walks up and says, "Oh my gosh, is this your foster? Can I meet her?" And she's showing any type of hesitancy, right? They do not have to pet her, and you have to get in front of it. You say, "Hey, look, she's a little nervous, but here's what we can do. Don't try to pet her, but I'll give you some cheese or I'll give you some food. Just toss it to her. And then maybe next time she'll be a little more warm, or, you can fill that gap with whatever makes sense." But the idea
Right.
being it doesn't have to go as far as that person may think it should go. It really should go as far as your dog is comfortable with it going. And if, like I said, if there's any hesitancy, you be her advocate and say, "Hey, look,
Oh,
maybe next time."
well, I was thinking about getting her a do not pet vest, just sort of
Yeah.
as a visual warning to
Yeah.
people, because I have to tell you, when I first took her to the vet made me put a muzzle on her because she was afraid of her. And I just took her last week, and the vet said, "This is a totally different dog
Good.
than she
Good.
was a year ago," which
Good.
was great. But I still have a certain amount of mistrust. I don't want people who don't know her uh, getting in her face and making her anxious.
Yeah.
So would a
Yeah.
do not pet vest help, or would that be worse?
So, well, I don't think it'd be worse, but you may realize real quickly, like even if you had a neon flashing sign that said, "Do not come within 10 feet," people, I tell
That's
people all the
true.
time, human logic will go out the window when dogs are involved. Like we all become kids again, so the best thing is to assume that anyone in your vicinity is going to want to interact with her. Dogs are attention magnets. So when you recognize that they are likely on their way to you, that's when your job is to advocate for them. And the facilitating of interactions at first is challenging because it happens quickly if they even ask, right, to pet your dog, but it does happen quickly. And no one wants to tell people, "No, you can't pet my dog," but when you look at your dog and you ask yourself, okay, do they even want to be petted right now? And if that answer is not heck yes, um, go with plan B. And plan B is something that the world needs to understand at some point, is that, look, just because someone has a dog in public does not mean it's an invitation to just go and interact. I mean, it in time will become that. But for now, we have to be the voices for them until the world understands, okay, we recognize a nervous dog. But like I said, beware the magic people, and they will give you all the verbiage that you can handle as far as, "Oh, I can make them love me. I just need them to lick my face or kiss them or pet them,"
Yeah,
or yeah,
this
exactly.
dog does not lick at all.
Well,
I mean, it's
good for you.
shocking,
Yeah.
but
Neither is
she
Chief.
does not lick.
Yeah.
And it's actually kind of good. It's not a terrible thing, honestly. But
Excellent.
yeah, I have magic people in my family who are offended that she hasn't like warmed up to them yet. But
It's not personal, but
she picks her people.
yeah. Well, last kind of point on this, is to, when you encounter a person that may take it personally that they don't the dog doesn't like them, ask them why. Why should this dog like you? I mean, like it's a very fair question, but there's an easy answer, is that there isn't why. These dogs, especially, rescue cases, we don't know their history, right? We can't know. We only know what we're seeing right now. And the idea being, okay, if we see anxiety or nerves or sensitivity, no pressure on that dog. I mean, and over time, again, seeing that confidence come out, and when a person earns a trust from a dog like that, it's way more worth it than, this 8-month-old puppy that's loving on the whole life, so
Everybody.
yeah, excellent. Okay, we're going to shift
Thank you.
now. You're welcome. You're welcome. So Allison's got a question over here. It says, what are suggestions for when foster dog enters your home for the first time? How to review the routine in your house? It's a weekend, or I can't read that. My little thing's in the way. If it is a weekday, and then a day when you may be at work and the dog might be placed in a kennel for a short period of time. Okay, so if you have, so I'm, where's Allison? Let's see. Let's let Allison unmute her thing. There she is. Beautiful. Hey, Allison.
Hey, Anthony.
So are you
My-
meaning like if you're getting a foster dog, but then like you have to go to work or something, like leave the house for X amount of time?
Yeah, so if
Yeah.
you have the opportunity, the foster comes in on the weekend and your routine is very different, like you may be around a lot more and there's more time and attention that you have and your family members have to give the dog
Gotcha.
versus, and then 2 days later, you're at your work routine and something's different. So just
Yeah.
suggestions on either on that type of,
Yeah,
I don't know how to
absolutely.
go
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. So you can always simulate like it's a normal day. I mean, simulation is almost as good as the normal day, right? So like that option is there, but independence is a factor that I think is worth helping develop in all foster dogs too. Just to give you y'all a brief kind of idea of just me and dogs too. From a developmental standpoint, independence, confidence, resiliency, and patience, those 4 character traits, if you have those in mind when it comes to living with your dogs, whether it's foster or adopted or a friend's dog, if you have those things in mind, you will inherently help them develop those traits, right? Eating independently, I think, is a great approach. So, like when it comes to feeding, even if you feed your personal dog like out in the kitchen, feed foster dog in a space where he's likely to hang out, whether it be where he's going to sleep, where he's going to be when you're gone, or where he's going to eat his meals. That can help create that association with that space of being left alone. Does that make sense? Um, that's why I love feeder balls too, or some sort of thing that extends feeding, because I can give them a feeder ball in a crate or in a room, and then I can close the door and walk out. And another thing that I love to have on foster dogs in their spaces are cameras. I mean, Wise, the brand is WYZE. They're on Amazon. Fairly cheap camera, maybe $30. Doesn't require a subscription or anything, but it gives you live feeds. So you can check in after you close that door and walk away. You can check in at 5 minutes, see what they're doing, maybe a little stressed, maybe a little stirry, and then check in 20 minutes and see them working a thing or not. Everything is going to give you that data to then say, all right, we really have to help this one with some independence, or we have to adjust our management strategy. But the idea being, try to help them become comfortable with the idea of being by themselves. So it does help to have a family that's all on board with this, because it is hard, like I said, to say, all right, we got to let this dog relax for a little while because everyone really wants to play with them. But you may create a pattern that the dog may be on board with, which is let's play all day until I pass out. Especially young ones. Young dogs, I say, will their whole life's purpose is to play, right? And they don't regulate well like this. They spike and then they crash. And I mean, unless you can time out that crash, best to create some sort of normalcy so that way the dogs aren't just like, oh my gosh, everyone's leaving. Now my whole world is shifted. Ease them into the idea of living with you full time. We were talking about one of my foster dog earlier. Wilbur is a fantastic example of this. Like this dog would love to play all day long, right? But he doesn't, he's doing it so much better, but he wasn't great at first at regulating himself. So it's like an 80-pound puppy who just wants to play the whole time he's with you. He has to learn how to spend extended periods of time with people. So a little bit different case, but what Wilbur needs is just that place to decompress and digest. So for him, that separate space, he he's all down with that, you know, and it helps with him. But if you have a dog that say is more separation anxiety or just a little more stress with being away, intermittent periods of time are great. And then also timing out when that dog does need a nap or a break or a time to just cool it down, give them some busy work in that space, and then just check in on them. But the real answer to your question, Allison, is just time will be a factor, meaning every time a dog comes stays with me, the first night is the most challenging. It may not be, you know, screaming their lungs out, but there's a little, you know, emotions being on display. But once things become predictable, once you get to that second day of the week, okay, these things are happening. And like I said earlier, dogs will adapt if we give them a chance to. That's the really important point, I think, is giving them a chance versus, okay, we got to change it after day one, you know, and then you might end up with the situation where you're constantly trying to do something different till you run out of ideas. But time and routine, those things will help the dog start to adjust to that routine. And there is this it's used a lot, this 3-3-3 rule. 3 days they're learning the routine, 3 weeks they're settling in, and then 3 months something else. I forget it at this point because in reality it's a really good framework, I think, to think about, but don't use it as concrete. Don't think, all right, it's day 3 and they're still not, just because you're setting yourself up for more frustration that way. Just read them and note any progress, even if it's tiny, because that will help boost your self-esteem and help you, encourage you to kind of keep going in that direction. You know, fostering can be very emotionally taxing, very frustrating, especially after you say you worked a full day and you come home and now we got to deal with so and so who's bouncing off the walls because he's been sleeping all day. But that's where some strategy can really help out. Again, the independent enrichment, and busy work, those types of things are game changers in reality, with foster
Great,
dogs.
thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right, let's see. Okay, so Russ says Naz will let a child approach to pet, yet goes into protection mode if an adult approaches. So Russ, I would treat them both in the same. You know, I would say if there's a child who's likely going to be attached to adult most of the time, I would have them both toss treats just to prevent any hypersensitivity from Naz. Even though he may not have an issue with the kid, still the looming adult likely is still in frame. So I would just create space, have them toss treats, and go about your walk. Let's see. Amy asks, what is the best way to train a dog not to jump on people and be mouthy? The orphans have that tendency. Yes, they do. So, all right, where's Amy? All right, so we can let Amy loose in here. But so, Amy, as far as, well, let me just say this as a whole. To teach a dog not to do a thing is an incredibly difficult concept for them to grasp without using unethical methods, right? I mean, jumping, you think, okay, why do dogs jump on people? They're generally excited, generally trying to smell our faces or lick our skin or just emote themselves, right? Mouthiness, I should say this, mouthiness, humping, zooming, tugging on pants or fabric on our clothing, jawing on our arms and legs. These are all signs of hyper arousal, meaning the dogs are very keyed up and they're not likely to calm themselves down in that moment, right? Especially if they're jumping and we're using any manual tendencies to try to stop them, like pushing them down or holding them down. Let's see. All right, Amy, can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, so what would be the context of when your dogs are jumping on you or on other people? Is it like when they come over, or when you come home from work, or you let her out of the crate or space, or what are some scenarios?
I think what the fosters will say, it's when they come home, when they come in the door, the dog will jump up on them. Or if they are walking the dog and the dog sees somebody, they're starting to jump up. Their first reaction is to jump onto the person.
Gotcha.
And they don't know how to handle it. And the pushing down is like the tendency, but that, like you said, tends to just they're doing it because they're getting a reaction, and so
Right,
it's really
right.
not calming them down, it's making them continue. I've
Gotcha.
tried to tell them to turn away, turn their back. Some of the dogs will then just start jumping on your back. So
Right. Yeah.
curious.
Yeah. So the context being somebody coming home from work, all right? Let's just start with that. So if you come home from work and your dogs meet you on the back side of the door, right? They have known that you were here for at least a good 3 minutes before you got to that door, right? So all the arrival signs that your dogs recognize, whether it be tires turning into the driveway, car doors opening and closing and locking, garage doors opening up the stairs or whatever, now we're here. All right. So they're likely been at a 10 for a second, right? So unless there's any alternative way for them to regulate on the other side of that door, I would suggest not giving them direct access to the door that you walk in, just because you would have to predict that you're going to get met by them on the other side. The so some alternatives to that, baby gates are great, X pins, using a different entry to your house while they're there. The idea is to try to create some buffer or barrier between you and the dog's shared space. Think about if you walked in and there was a pin around the door or just some sort of buffer to where the dog can't access the door. Now we've created an opportunity for the dog to think, how do I get them to come in through this thing? Okay. That buffer, it may take like a second of patience, right? But if the dog's able to start offering behaviors, now they're actually thinking versus just reacting to us. Then lies an opportunity for them to offer any calm behavior for you to come in to their space. So like that's just like one idea is to create some sort of speed bump to where the dog has to use its brain versus just reacting to the emotions it's feeling. But once you walk in through that gate, I would expect another spike in emotions because now we're in the same space, right? So Amy mentioned turning around. The idea with turning around is really removing attention from the dog, right? And maybe saving our front side. But the idea of turning around is one option, depending on the dog. May be a successful option. Another option is just keep moving to your destination. You know, if you have bags in your arms, it may be better to like get rid of the bags before you walk in. But if you have to offload anything, just go to your destination. They're likely to jump on you for the first second, but once you're moving, they're likely to shed off of you and then, just anticipate whatever's going to happen next. But just moving is another option. If you just stand there, I do that all the time when I go into folks' homes. Like dogs jump on me the first time they meet me, and almost everyone's reaction is, get down, get down, get down. But I tell them, let's see what the dog does next, because the dogs are just making choices, and their answer is all the same. What gets interaction from this person? So if, and this is me, not like obviously like not an elderly person or somebody that would be damaged or hurt from this, but like if a dog jumps on me, I'm just going to wait and see what it does next. Then you're going to start to see the wheels spin. And if it sits, it might get some interaction from me. But you have to just be mindful in that context of arriving home or friends coming over or something exciting happening that they are going to be prone to getting more excited as situations happen, right? Let's say you're having a Super Bowl party. I had clients that had a Super Bowl party and I said, well, how many people are y'all anticipating? They said, I don't know, 5 or 6 groups of people, couples and stuff. So I said, all right, there's a couple options of what you can do. This is actually an old AGB dog. So I said, you could put her in the backyard. I said, and have her out there. I said, as long as she's not greeting them at the door, it will help with her because there's going to be multiple people coming in and out of this situation. So I said, you can have her out back at first. Once everyone is established, then you can let her come in. You could give everyone treats to give to her if you like. She's a very trusting dog, so it wasn't a problem, but she is a very hyperactive dog. So what I did tell them, another idea was when everyone gets here and is established, grab a couple tennis balls. Y'all just go out there, throw a couple for her, and then go back to doing what you were doing. It gave her a task to do that built trust and diverted attention away from the people. And then they were able to have their experience. So if you have a dog that loves tennis balls but comes and jumps on every person walking in, experiment with having the next person walk in with a tennis ball and see what that dog thinks is happening. Because if they love tennis balls or love a toy, if you have a guest or somebody that walks in administer that thing, now their focus goes to that thing versus why are you here? Why are you here? Why are you here? Right. Busy work again is an option with that. I love to do that, especially when the beginning of a consult, when we're trying to have a, detailed conversation, but the dogs are very excitable. Bam, bam. Now you watch where they take those things and they camp out. Now they're preoccupied and not over aroused. In fact, they're doing the opposite. They're working themselves down. So great question. Again, with the mouthiness, and the humping and zoom in, these are all signs of way overstimulation. So if it's at that level, we want to decrease our actual input with them. So busy work or time to decompress or a separate space, that would likely be the route I take. But if it's coming home from work, you may go right into feeding them, and then all that arousal goes into the act of eating too. So great question. Great question. All right. So Ellie asks, can you give tips on knowing when reactivity is anxiety, fear, or aggression? So great question, Ellie. So big topics here, anxiety and aggression. Now, when it comes to aggression as a whole, right? Aggression is a way of communication. And I think that is something that doesn't really register with us a lot of times because it looks so ugly. But aggression being a way to generally say, let's create space or go away from me or stop doing that thing or don't come near me. Fear and pain are almost always the most likely causes of aggression. So anxiety can be a factor in fear, but anxiety can also just mean, they're just not comfortable in their own skin. Most of the time, anxious dogs are going to be more what we call fear avoidant. In other words, they want to remove themselves from the situation. If dogs in that case aren't able to remove themselves out of that situation, then you may see communication become more forward because there is no other option. But general anxiety may not likely lead to aggression. It just may lead to more challenging situations like being able to go for a walk or quote normal like things. And the approach with those types of dogs that are just kind of generally anxious is confidence boosting, and really shrinking our expectations of dogs in that category, because even though we may have like big goals for them, we got to celebrate the tiniest goal. I don't know if y'all know Kate. She's a Adopt a Golden alumni, and I think Allie, her sister, is in this chat somewhere. So we went on a walk today, and on a leash in her neighborhood, and this dog is very anxious, right? But the bond that she's built with her mom allowed her to be able to do that. Now, we didn't go for a 2-mile walk. We just went around the cul-de-sac, but that's a huge win for that dog. And recognizing these small wins, again, can boost our self-esteem when it comes to helping these dogs out. Like I said, it can be defeating or deflating to say, oh, we can't do this because so-and-so is so anxious. But don't let that be the end of it. Think of ways that you can modify whatever goals you might have to fit that dog's needs. I think that is a great approach. Same thing with fear. Confidence boosting is a huge factor. Trust building is a huge factor. But you have to always keep in mind, okay, where is our kind of limit with this dog on any given day? Because there is a concept that we talk about regularly called trigger stacking. So like, let's say my dog is fearful of new people, and we encounter one person and we walk them through everything. We give them some treats to toss to them and it goes well. Then it happens again and the dog's a little bit more sensitive and it goes okay. And then the third time the dog's like, get away from me. I don't want anything to do with it. That doesn't wash away the whole experience. It just tells us there is a limit and we have to just kind of keep in mind how much they can tolerate. But from aggression standpoint, this is another great deep topic. But the idea with aggression is almost always it's appropriate when they're communicating. It's really our job to recognize what are they trying to communicate or what do they think is happening. It happens a lot with dogs that are, say they're on the couch and we need them to get off the couch. We might try to like scoot their butt and they might or growl at us or even just look at us or show their teeth. That's very subtle aggression, but it's something that we got to hear them out. You know, we got to say, okay, manually moving this dog is not doable without risking getting bit or you know, amplifying the communication on their end, right? So we see that and we say, okay, what's a force-free way we can do the same thing? Or how important is it right now to get her off the couch? I mean, these are very important questions to ask ourselves in real time because it can be the difference between a person getting bit or dog stays on the couch for an extra 10 minutes, but then we put food on the ground and she goes down at her own speed and then she goes into wherever. You know, there are many ways to accomplish the same goal. Bathing is a big one. You know, bathing dogs that are fearful, it's not easy, right? Especially in a bathtub with running water in a room they'd never been in that's really echoey or whatever, slippery on the floor. You think about all those things to a dog and it's like, wow, they're really having to process a ton in real time. And if they're not comfortable, they're justified to express it. But then our job is to say, okay, how can we do the same thing in a less invasive way or at a rate they can tolerate? You know, shampoo-less wipes, just having pitchers of water that you can pour cups instead of having the actual running water. There's a lot of ways to accomplish those goals. But in reality, less is more when it comes to anxious or fearful or sensitive dogs. Backing off, hearing them out and saying, okay, how can we approach this perhaps a little bit differently is the way to go. But you guys have me as a resource. So don't feel like you have to try something for the sake of trying it. Contact a professional if you feel there's a chance that the aggression may build. Because again, we don't want to have our dogs in really any situations where they feel the need to be aggressive. It's almost always situational, and a lot of it can be avoided. But it takes a human to step back and say, all right, let's look at the situation, you know, again, right? Or have another eye on the situation and then see what makes most sense. So great. I'm glad you brought up this topic, Sally. So thank you for that. Okay. Lisa Riley, what are good practices from deterring dogs from going through the trash, getting on the counter, begging at the dinner table? Okay. Lisa, so the first two situations you mentioned, going through the trash or getting on the counter. Think about our relationship with dogs as a whole and then ask yourself, okay, how much of that, if we were to make percentages out of this, break it down, how much of that relationship would be us giving them food? A lot of it, right? I mean, whether we met them for the first time or we're feeding them or we're giving them treats or we're giving them a special thing. So we cannot fault dogs for following their senses. You know, dogs are scavengers and they're adaptable. And who knows these, you know, rescue cases, what their history of survival was like, right? Maybe it was, I mean, you go to the landfill, you'll see dogs living there, puppies to older dogs, right? So it's hard to fault them when it comes to situations like this. In my mind, most all of general situations like this or potential problematic situations can be resolved with management and prevention. You know, we can get trash cans that have lids that lock. We can put our trash can in a under the sink thing or in a pantry or something. So that at least can be something that you can manage and then prevent them from practicing. That's the idea. If every time you, after you eat food, you scrape your plate in the trash can and then dog goes over to the trash can, I mean, that can become a routine very quickly. They will remember that, right? Same thing like leaving things on the counter. They they know, I joke with clients and I say, they know what was on your counter last week, today, right? So their sense of smell is so strong. I find it hard to fault dogs for checking the counter or exploring or being interested in the counter. Now, if there is something up there that they can get and they get it, it's a mistake on our end, right? But we can't fault the dog for doing that. You're not going to be able to communicate to that dog that that was bad. All he knows is there was food and I ate it and it was accessible and it was good and I'll wait for the next one. But again, recognize the potential of a pattern. One of my dogs, she's the smallest one, but every time she runs down, there's nothing for her to get, but she's going to look and then she's going to go down this way. I mean, the idea of checking in my mind is hard to fault them for, but we can really manage their resources. And that's when it comes to food. That's when it comes to things we don't want them to have, like our medication or tools and stuff. Management and prevention is your best friend. So utilize it. Don't expect them to not go for it. In fact, think the opposite way. Think that they are going to go for that, and we can adjust before they have a chance to practice it. But when an accident does happen, this is actually a really important thing. So if they were to get something that they shouldn't off the counter or out of the trash can, the way that I look at this is unless it's life threatening right now, which I will risk getting bit to get that thing from them. But if it's not life threatening, trade with them for something else. Food, other food, high value food, something they recognize, and make them an offer they can't refuse. We have a quick tendency to get things from dogs, but we don't know these dogs' history with things getting taken from them. Assume happened, assume that's why they got rid of it. I mean, it can really help us look at a situation and say, okay, he's got a chicken leg. We got to get it back from him. How do we do this? Let's think logically. Go get the bag of treats, high value treats from the kitchen, pour it on the ground away from the thing, give him a chance to go get it. We want the dog to willingly get rid of whatever they might have and trade it and go get the other thing so we can pick it up safely. We don't want to trick them. You might can trick them once, but twice you're going to be in a race, and they win those races a lot. And if we find ourselves racing, it just is going to amp up energy and arousal, and things can happen. People can get bit that way. When in reality, there's no thinking happening. The dog's just focused on this resource at the time. So again, management and prevention is your best friend. But if you find yourself in a situation, try to always trade. I mean, when I teach dogs, or when I teach people to teach their dogs drop it, I tell them the concept of drop it to dogs should mean if you get rid of this, you're going to get something else, not just get rid of that thing because I told you so. We have to incentivize them to do this thing. So that way, if you need them to drop it, you could communicate, drop it, and maybe not have a thing on you right then, but they know that means I get something. So here, what's next, right? So they're, again, very simple-minded, but that's where effective communication is important, and we get lucky a lot. So if your dog loves to tug, drop it tug is the best game to play drop it with. So is fetch, but the concept is trading for something else that is appropriate. Begging at the dinner table, again, you can manage them by feeding them while you're eating at the dinner table or give them something else to do. But it's hard to ignore them if they're sitting right there next to you, and it's hard to fault them for not thinking we're going to give them something. So prevention
Well,
is,
and
yeah.
when I got Honey Bunny Bad Bunny, she was, I don't know, quite overweight. And so we have worked diligently for a year. She's lost 8 pounds,
Hey
which
now.
is like 10% of her body weight almost. I mean, she's lost a lot. But the vet said she still needs to get, she was 70 when I got her. She's 62 and she needs to be 55. And big girl likes to eat. She likes everything. And I've done the skinny mini treats, the smaller treats. I've baked her treats for her. I'm saying treat and she's starting to get excited now.
Yeah.
But I just I'm afraid to trade too much because I don't want to put weight back on her. So is there,
What
I mean,
is she getting that you would be trading for? Because that's really like the crux of it.
Well, sometimes it's I give her a treat to get off the couch, or because she's on the couch a lot, but sometimes she takes up a lot of space on the couch. So we'll give her a treat, or I give her a treat when we're walking because I want her to sit still and not react to someone walking past us, or
Gotcha.
even somebody in the distance because she'll lunge. And she's pulled me off my feet a few times just because she really doesn't want other people or dogs breathing her air on walks.
Gotcha.
So
So I
Um,
guess, I mean, the idea would be you can pick and choose when you want to give or support her behaviors by giving her treats for that. Um, so like if she does something she does all the time, you may just give her a different type of reward, being physical interaction, petting, praise, things like that. Because people do think treats only means food, and it really the idea of smelling all that pea mail you were talking about earlier, that is a life reward. It's not something that we physically give them, but we give them access to it. Same thing with petting and praise and other experiences as a reward. But
Mhm.
in your case too, I would also explore the different types of active feeding enrichment for her. To say she might be
okay.
burning some energy to eat her meals, you can also experiment with treating with her food too. To say she's not getting anything extra calories or anything crazy. But you're on your way. 8 pounds and you got however much to go. So
Yeah, I got a
there.
few
You'll
more to
get there.
go, but
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
asking that.
you.
Excellent. All right. Jennifer would like to start fostering again. What are some best practices I should keep in mind? Patience. Patience is the biggest thing. I mean, when it comes to fosters, everyone, like I said, is either ready to show them off or to modify their behavior. Don't focus on modifying that behavior. Focus on learning that dog. Learn what it likes. Learn what it doesn't like. Learn what its tendencies are as far as he loves to smell, or he loves to wrestle, or he loves to be massaged on, or he loves to eat. I mean, all this information, it sounds trivial, but it paints a picture of who that dog is and what is going to happen, or what information we get to set this dog up for success in the next place. I joke around with folks and I say, you could think of me as a dog trainer, but also a person who lives with dogs professionally. You live with dogs enough, you figure out tips and strategies to help create as good of an environment for everyone involved. Because my dogs are managed in different ways, different groups. But if you learn how to live with that dog at a way that is, I mean, tolerable for you, you've created the blueprint for the next place. Whatever that means. That means he loves to lay in the sunroom, or he loves to get belly rubs at night before we go to bed, or he goes in his crate on his own whenever he wants. Like all that information is going to be good, but a lot of it is going to take time to figure out those tendencies with that dog. So patience is the biggest factor when it comes to learning the dog and weathering the dog too, because you may be, let's say, the first foster on this dog, or hopefully the last, but say no one has experience with living with that dog before. It's going to be a trial and error type approach, but recognize again your own patience level. That's something that I try to remind people, is that we are not perfect and we have our limits and we have our own lives and emotions and things we're dealing with outside of this dog too. So use your resources, whether it be another foster who lived with this dog previously, or someone like me or another professional that can give you some guidance with setting that dog up for success. But having as much information as you can before the dog comes there is going to help out big time, to know, okay, this dog is, he's an 80-pound big dog and he is going to jump on counters if he can access them. So then you might say, oh, well, my house is nothing but counters. What should I do? First step would be clean the counters, first, or explore other options as far as where the dog's going to hang out. But when I bring a dog into my home or into a new home, I always say start with their world being small, whether it be just kind of hanging out in a living room area with you being supervised. And once you can trust this dog, meaning he's not destroying things and he's not flipping over the couch or whatever, then you might grow that dog's world and give him more access to things. You don't have to keep him on a leash all the time, but supervising is huge because you will note them being drawn to certain things, things that you interact with, things that are smelly, things that are fluffy, things that are they can shred. And you may learn it the hard way, but once you learn it, that information is really vital for setting that dog up for success wherever it goes next. So learn the dog, have your routine, which is consistent, patience and consistency, and then recognizing progress one way or another. I think those are good practices, but every human, dog, and environment will be unique and will have its own unique challenges. But that's where we can help you out for sure with that.
So I recently
Yes.
adopted.
Okay.
And so
Congratulations.
yeah, thanks. He's great. So he's a 2-year-old Great Pyrenees, so he's huge.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking to foster again, but I'd only done it with, I guess, my old dogs that I've known since being a puppy. And so looking at the foster list, and not being able to, well, maybe, I guess I could, that could be a recommendation, but picking up a foster, it's not as typically as structured as like, hey, Anthony, can you go meet me at this trail and we'll do a side-by-side walk and we'll see if they get along.
Yeah.
So
You're talking
any
about with your dog?
recommendations, I guess, on I guess if you're bringing a foster in to a dog, he's great with other dogs so far, no issues. He is giant though, so he could intimidate dogs. Of kind of how you introduce that second dog when you haven't had a dog you're 100% familiar with,
Yeah.
because I haven't seen him in all situations.
Gotcha. So there's two pieces to this puzzle. One is the established dog, which is the one you adopted, and then the potential foster dog. And
Mhm.
understanding those two personalities to predict, are they likely to gel on the front end, or is it going to take some time and structure to do, is totally determined by them and your environment, right? In other words, I mean, my house is full of special needs, but like if I bring in a foster dog, they're not going to meet, definitely not on the first day, and not until I understand that dog through and through with me.
Okay.
For example, Wilbur's a great example. I'll use him again. So he's done a couple stints of fostering with me for extended period of time. The first time he stayed with me, I'm learning him inside and out without other variables influencing that. Does that make sense? So he
You
gets
just kept him totally separate to
Mhm.
begin with? Okay.
Yep. And noting though that he was comfortable with that. Again, cameras validate that for me,
Mhm.
and the lack of stress that he experiences when he's away. So that's specific for his case, right? But I think that's where a patient approach with integrating dogs together is super important, especially for your established dog too, because
Mhm.
I mean, there are cases where there's a home with a established dog that does great with most all fosters, right? Now they bring a new dog in, they expect to play and do those fun things with that dog. So if that pattern's already there, you might, have some quicker integration with that, right? But typically the dogs I get are going to be more, more challenging in a sense. So I like to segregate them so I can understand them. And then once I am with them, then I can set up safety parameters if it makes sense, right? For example, with Wilbur, he met one of my dogs yesterday out in the backyard. And the way that I did it was the time that I had been spending with Wilbur, I got him comfortable wearing a muzzle. And I knew my dog was comfortable wearing a muzzle too. And that created a safety blanket to let greetings happen more naturally for them, right? Because everyone's approach to greetings are different. And every scenario that you try to introduce dogs is going to be different. But with Wilbur, he experiences a lot of leash frustration, a lot of barrier frustration. So he's going to be very vocal and forward with other dogs, but really it's just because he's lacking access to that dog. So the greeting yesterday went great and they played and with muzzles on and it was beautiful. But it only lasted 30 minutes because I know he gets so excited so easily. That was a lot for him to take in and he needed to have a break. So if you do say integrate your dogs early on, that still doesn't mean they need to spend every minute every day together because they're gonna bond, right? But also they may get on each other's nerves at some point.
Yeah.
So the idea of giving them time away to decompress is so valuable, for both dogs, whether they know it or not, right? Especially young ones, because young ones, like I said earlier, they don't typically take their own breaks. They go until we pass out, So creating that structure for integration with them can help them develop a relationship. And that's how I did it for a crew that I have here. That's 4 of them together, where I learned their personalities and I saw them. First, it was always a one-on-one greeting, but then started to build the group out. But once I saw them trust each other, meaning they got aroused and then they would go and do other things and disengage from each other, that was really like the writing on the wall that group really trust each other. And that's what you want from two dogs, is you want to help them build a relationship to know that they're not a threat to each other. They're not having to compete for resources. They're not having to, you know, fight for attention or whatever. It's just each dog will be different, but really going at their speed is important. Unless their speed is all out at the front end, then maybe go at a slower speed just to help them out with that. So
And
uh
that's helpful. I think I've been reluctant because I didn't want to separate them because I felt like they weren't getting attention. But I think I'm just gonna have to, yeah, do that, and then you just see the way it goes.
yeah, you know, I mean, and they can share a yard together. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
space with novel stimulus can help with hyper focusing on each other. In other words, they have a lot of other things to check out and explore versus just what's he doing here, and then very tense and trying to figure each other out in a close quarter kitchen is a challenge, right? But also to other folks that may have multiple dogs at home, like established dogs you've had for their whole lives, right? Giving them breaks from each other is beneficial for them too. And it can give you solo time with one of them and solo time with the other. Or in Jennifer, your case, if you give them breaks from each other, you can spend solo time with your adopted dog too. And then you could reverse that. So there's just a lot of benefit to giving dogs breaks from each other that we often don't think about. So it's very common though. But thank you for bringing that up. Let's see, Beth, do you want to do a couple more questions, or we might have, let's see, one more question. How does that sound for you?
I see a couple of questions from Russ. And
Okay.
also Jennifer on introductions. If you see a dog that you're reading about and you think it might be a good fit, Amy, our foster manager, generally knows a good bit about the dogs, and maybe, somebody could even meet you at a vet clinic or at a park on a neutral ground,
Yeah.
just to kind of see how they get along initially. Sometimes that's a good.
Yeah, you've seen Coda.
Yeah, and he's so
Oh, yeah.
chill and laid back. But he doesn't have to like everybody. But that might be good. One of us could meet you and just do a quick intro and see how it goes.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so Russ says Russ, tell me how to pronounce that name again. I forget. Okay. I don't know if I can hear him that well. But I will go with Te. Russ, how about that? So let's see. So Te is still extremely reserved. Any ideas, ways we can try to stimulate her? So what we did, this is Allie's or Kate's sibling, I believe, Allie. Tactile approach. What we've been doing a lot with her is consent petting. So for those of you who don't know, the dog he's referring to is very reserved, very shy, not super mobile, not super flamboyant by any means, but she's very loving, very sweet. So what we've done with her sister was just do consent petting, which is just petting her for a moment, stopping, seeing if she seeks it out at all. Also, just for everyone to understand, places where dogs really can melt with petting. A lot of people go for the heads and faces, but really the sides of their head are very nice. They lean into that. Sometimes the bridge can be decompressing to them. Finger massages, so like nothing crazy, but just using your fingers to create pressure at different points of their body. There's a lot of different petting techniques you can look up, but really recognize how the dog accepts or doesn't that petting. And I like the idea of petting for a moment and stopping and seeing how they respond. But that's one option. Something that we did with Kate too was smelly things. So I told her one day, I said, do your laundry in the room where she is and just like let her smell the smells that she is experiencing. Smelling can also be decompressing, pressing to dogs. And I think they've done some studies with lavender odors to help dogs calm down. But, Taya is pretty calm. But the idea of just some novelty, you're just trying to engage with her senses, just not her sense of like active types of activities. More licking things could be an option. Smelling things could be an option. Another thing we did with Kate was instead of feeding her out of a bowl, I told her, I said, pour her food on her dog bed and then put a blanket over it and let her just get to it. Like you just create minor obstacles that they can overcome to do normal things, and that can sometimes help build confidence too. But with some dogs, just being present is enough. Just being with them is enough. So lots of different ways to do it. But again, I would say with her, less is more. But try to give her activities where she can initiate or engage at her speed if she wants to. I think that's a kind of a way to go. But definitely sense of smell is something to explore with her. Sound too, but mostly smell, I would say. Let's see. Yeah, routine. Okay, Lisa's got a question. What can you do when the entire group doesn't like just one dog? Let's see. Where's Lisa? Okay, so Lisa, are you meaning the entire group of dogs doesn't like this new dog that comes in? Is that right? Yeah. So
Right.
yeah.
So, we'll get together for holidays. All of my kids each have rescue dogs. And so there's a pack at my house. And for some reason, one of my daughter's dogs, out of all 8 of them that come, um, everybody, I don't know if they just don't like the way he looks or smells or what, but the other dogs that don't growl at each other or anybody else will get aggressive with this one dog. And I can't figure out what it is about him because he's a very sweet dog. But the other ones just, I mean, they don't care for him.
Well, so what is this one dog's history with other dogs? Does it live in a house with other dogs? Does it get to play
It
with other
lives in a
dogs?
house, yeah, with one other dog.
One. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I mean, I'm looking really through the lens of that dog in that context to say, is that an overwhelming situation for that dog? Debatable. But
Possible.
also, yeah, and also from the other dog's perspective, if there's some reason that maybe they're not, playing right off the bat, or they may be just hyper interested in that dog, or there can be a lot of things. But the idea of what I would do is try to shrink the group if possible, or see if you can find one dog that dog does get along with and have them perhaps in their own space. There's a lot of factors when you got 8 dogs in one environment.
Mhm.
But management can be helpful with that. But again, I look at that one dog and think, okay, what is that experience like? Because if there's a lot of hypersensitivity, I wouldn't have it necessarily in that environment completely immersed with the other dogs. Might take
Yeah, and
an approach.
it's very infrequent. It's Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas. The kids all bring their pets with them, and I want to help this poor dog because he has a companion 24/7 at home, and all the other dogs are playing together, and then he comes around and it's like they don't want him anywhere near him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and truthfully, he may not even want to be near them in that context either. It
That's
can,
true.
family visits can be pretty overwhelming for everybody, humans and animals too. Because you got a
Yes.
lot of things that you're trying to toss around. So like, don't just think that that's the only way to do it. There may be other strategies to it. Because I mean, try asking my parents what they do when I want to bring a dog over. They're like, no, we don't want to. No, no. And so I got to respect that, But also I understand, I'm not gonna put dogs that don't love those type of situations in that situation. And that same mindsets should be appropriate for if you have, say, a friend who has a dog and you have a foster that maybe, say you got a foster that was taking time to adjust to your environment, and your friend was like, oh, bring him over, he can play with the so and so, he loves to play with dogs. And that may be true, right? But you have to assume if that dog was sensitive coming into your environment, there's probably going to be some sensitivity going into another new environment. So like you can get a lot of information before you bring that dog over there. Where you think we're going to keep the dogs? It may sound like a lot of housekeeping, but really you're just trying to figure out if we're trying to make it work or if we're hoping that it's going to work. Again, those two
Yeah.
concepts can be, very conflicting, but the idea is the more information you have, the better. And if you're ever unsure, you don't have to put them in that situation. In fact, if you're unsure whether it be a greeting or friends coming over or a dog coming over, reassess, step back and say, all right, what are some other things we could do that everyone can get on board with, and dogs included. So
Oh,
Excellent,
great.
excellent
Thank you.
question. Okay.
Appreciate it.
All right. So Beth's got one more question. Oh no, this is yeah. So 4 things that I said a foster dog needs, but really all dogs need this: patience, consistency, resiliency, and independence. And I mean, you can probably flip the screen and look at us and feel the same way. I mean, I equate puppy raising to baby raising are very similar, except for in a few years you'll be able to talk to that baby clearly versus a dog where you can talk to it clearly and it will learn. But oftentimes there can be a lot of miscommunication too with dogs. So patience on the front end, setting them up for success, build trust, help them learn the routine that's predictable, learn that dog, learn its tendencies, and then be ready to translate that information to the adopters, right? Or back to the rescue, because we're always in this data collection state with when we're living with foster dogs, and every day is going to be different. But being able to consolidate that information and translate it is in everyone's best interest. So it is a challenge, like I said, but know that you have resources. I love meeting foster dogs at whatever step of their journey, because in reality, as long as they're moving forward, we can continue to make progress with them. But it is a challenge, and like I said, every situation will be different. But
If y'all look at the chat, we've got links to Anthony's website and his YouTube channel. So, Anthony, you've got great videos and cover some great topics there.
yes, thank you, thank you. I'm gonna put my email in there too. Let's see. Just so that way you guys have it there. I'm very easy to reach. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, website, YouTube. That's my email, anthony@noworriesdogtraining.com. Especially for fosters in the fostering community, I would love to meet with you if I haven't met with you yet. I know I've met with a few people on here, which is awesome. Great to see you again. But know that you have resources. I've been doing free in-home consultations for anyone in foster care or that has recently adopted a dog for like the past 3 years. And I don't really ever foresee that going away. I mean, with our culture and the amount of dogs that we have and the amount of people that are willing to open up their homes to the dogs is purely admirable. But know that you do not have to wing it. You do not have to just hope it works out. Like you have help if you want it. And by all means, don't think it's anything to reach out, whether it's an email request or a Zoom request if you live further out of state, or I could show up and walk you through it right there, and you'll get to see how I interact with the dog and build trust right on the front end too. So it's a dream job for me. It does not feel like a job, but it really is just like meeting new personalities regularly. So it never gets old to me. And like I said, I have a big space in my heart for the fostering community and want them to know that you have resources that aren't financially bound in any way too. So appreciate you guys letting me talk to y'all. We could do this whenever y'all want. So if y'all benefited from this, let the rescue know, and we can do whatever makes sense. But Beth and Jennifer, anything else as we wrap up?
Thank you so much, Anthony. This has been wonderful. And thank you, everybody, for joining. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And we'll have a recording too. And I'll get a copy and put it on my YouTube. And then Beth and Jennifer, y'all can obviously send the copy out to your folks over there.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you guys
so much.
Absolutely. So reach out if y'all need any help. Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Take care.